Good evening and a warm welcome. I'm Griha Atul and you're watching Plain Speak. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has arrived in Washington for a crucial two-day visit to the US. He was welcomed by the Indian community at Blair House, marking his first meeting with President Donald Trump since the latter's return to the White House. The Modi-Trump camaraderie played a key role during Trump's first tenure, and this visit signals a push to further strengthen the India-US ties. For New Delhi, a face-to-face between the two leaders is strategic, given their past rapport from 2017 to 2021. Now, immigration and tariffs remain the key issues on the table. The Trump 2.0 administration has been aggressive on both fronts, and India is expected to push for a fairer deal while deepening its strategic partnership with Washington. Now, Prime Minister Modi will meet President Trump in both restricted and delegation-level talks, and the high-stakes diplomacy will culminate in a private dinner that will be hosted by President Trump at the White House. Now, beyond bilateral talks, Modi also met US Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard and is expected to meet Elon Musk, Vivek Ramaswamy and Congressman Mike Waltz. Meanwhile, in a major announcement from the White House, Trump is set to unveil reciprocal tariffs before his meeting with Prime Minister Modi. Also, with the US deporting 104 Indian illegal immigrants and another 487 facing imminent removal, tensions prevail as New Delhi has registered concerns over their treatment of its citizens. Now, the Modi-Trump meet is expected to cover a range of crucial issues, with both leaders looking to strengthening the Indo-US ties. So here's a look at what is likely to be on the agenda. The first issue is of tariffs, and that remains key, particularly after the White House has stressed upon reciprocal levies. With both nations keen on expanding trade, Modi and Trump may discuss a limited trade deal to boost mutual economic growth. Next up, as far as the defense ties between India and US go, they in fact will also particularly be holding this crucial talk on the purchase of advanced defense systems and equipment. And Indian interest in acquiring US defense tech such as fighter jets or missile systems is high on the agenda, aligning with our strategic defense needs. Energy security is also another priority for India, with India now looking at more energy procurements from the US. This move is part of India's effort to diversify its energy source while also reducing its reliance on other countries in the face of the growing demand. Now, immigration policies and the challenges faced by Indian professionals working in the United States of America could also be discussed. Apart from this, the controversial deportation in the US military craft of Indians could also find mention in these talks. Also, visa delays and issues surrounding the processing of US visas for Indian nationals, particularly for students and workers, have been a point of contention. Prime Minister Modi and Donald Trump might aim to find ways to streamline the visa issuance process and also address the backlog, ensuring smoother travel and exchange between the two nations. Also, access to cutting-edge US defense technologies remains a key focus area for India's military modernization. Discussions are likely to center around greater access to advanced technologies such as drones, cyber defense tools, strengthening bilateral security and defense ties. But what lies ahead? Let's take you in fact through all the possible challenges that India may face while we are looking at this impending bilateral between Prime Minister Modi and US President Donald Trump. Challenge number one particularly is because of Donald Trump's erratic diplomacy, and that could complicate India's international relations. The second challenge that we feel India might face is that India might need to balance its autonomy while managing ties with the US and at the same time maintaining relationship with other countries like Russia and Iran. The third big challenge, India may need to adapt to US tariffs and balance global trade dynamics. And India must ensure that it remains attractive to investors while doing that for FDIs amid potential US policy changes. Also, lastly, the biggest challenge for India would be, of course, the H-1B visa and green card policies by Trump. Tough H-1B visa policies may impact Indian IT workers and companies. So we are asking today, as the stage is set for the Modi-Trump meet, what is next for India-US ties? Let me first bring in my colleague Sanjay Suri, who's joining us live from the United States of America. Sanjay, a lot is on the cards today, an important meet of Prime Minister Narendra Modi with US President Donald Trump. First of all, the decision that Donald Trump has in fact decided to meet upon Prime Minister Modi, making him only the third world leader after he's assumed office, is very, very significant.
Well, it is significant for the US, it is significant for India, and the menu that you have outlined is a very extensive one, and within that longish menu there are many areas of promise and cooperation. There has been a very strong convergence between the US and India for some time on political and strategic issues. There has also been a good deal of cooperation and business development taking place between companies from both the countries. And there is a lot of innovative technological solutions that have been looked at by India and by the US, and these have been by way of aircraft engines. We have seen in the nuclear field more cooperation coming up. The difficulty, really the hurdle to get past, will be Trump's insistence on reciprocal tariffs. He is due to announce those later today, according to the White House announcement earlier. And if those go ahead, that can certainly create a lot of difficulty for India. India will not be the country that will be, specifically set out, specifically named for these tariffs, but these tariffs would hurt India more than they would hurt any other country, for the reason that the tariff levels levied by India are higher than those of any other country that the US does trade with, and therefore India is going to be affected potentially the most by these tariffs. We're going to wait and see exactly what Trump spells out, whether this is a gambit to take a stronger position through the course of negotiations later in the day that would follow the announcement, and whether that is a negotiating ploy that Trump has set out. And that certainly would be the best case scenario. That's something that Indian officials would have to confront. But if you were to go ahead and impose these tariffs as declared, it will create a lot of difficulty for India.
Also, Sanjay, I'd like to understand whether or not immigration will be on top of the agenda, because a lot has been said back home here about the deportation of illegal Indians who in fact moved into US, and how they were sent back in that army in a military aircraft, and that was a subject of a lot of politics back home. Do you think Prime Minister Modi is going to breach on that subject?
Well, most certainly that has been raised, and it's certainly to be raised again. The manner of deportation certainly was not something that India will want to accept, and the US is unlikely to repeat. In September of last year, there was a flight of Indians deported from the US. They were not shackled or chained. In this case, it was a military aircraft that brought them. Certainly, India will be looking for a change in the way people are deported. But very quickly on this issue, and this is a very critical issue that you point to, we are looking at three sets of figures here. Three kinds of deportation, if you like. One, people who are caught at the border, packed into a plane and sent off. Then we are hearing of about 18,000 Indians who are awaiting deportation because they have been detected, and they've been detected through some sort of brush with the administration, which has shown that they were illegal, that they did not have documents. It need not necessarily be a crime, just some brush with administrative authorities. But then we could be looking at anything between 500,000 to 700,000 Indians in the US illegally, and they've been here for a long time, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years. A lot of them have they're married here, they have built property here, they have children here. The children are US citizens, so if they are deported, would the families be separated? Would they be separated from the children? This is a huge issue.
Absolutely.
And again, if Trump were to go ahead with the deportation as announced, this can be very devastating.
Absolutely, Sanjay. Thank you so much. So after that lowdown from Washington, D.C., let me now take this across to my guests who are joining us on Plain Speak this evening. A.B. Tirkanian, who's the former Nevada State GOP chairwoman and also a Republican strategist, is joining us live from Florida. Also live with us is Professor Andrew A. Latham, who's a columnist. He joins us live from St. Paul, Minnesota. And last but not the least, Meera Shankar, former envoy to the United States of America, is also with us. Ms. Shankar, I'll begin with you. What do you think is going to be key today in this Modi and Trump bilateral when it comes to tariff? How do you think Prime Minister Modi is going to navigate that issue?
Well, first, let me put it in the broader context. I think from the Indian side, the effort is going to be to focus on how Trump sees the India-US strategic partnership and what is the future trajectory of this partnership. I think that is the framework within which we want to situate the bilateral relationship. From India's side, there are a number of issues on the agenda, including defense cooperation, purchase of defense equipment, access to high technology computer chips and artificial intelligence products, strengthening cooperation in counterterrorism, and of course the cooperation in the field of energy, which would now be focused on fossil fuels because Mr. Trump has reneged on all the renewable energy programs. And so maybe we will refocus some of our cooperation. Perhaps India would like to buy some more fossil fuels from the US. And also, I think cooperation in the development of small modular nuclear reactors could be one of the areas where India seeks to work, but this may require legal changes in both the countries, as also the access to high technology computer chips or artificial intelligence products, because the regulatory framework in the US on these issues still is a bit restrictive. As far as trade is concerned, I think India is not a key trading partner of the US. Our two-way trade in goods and services was a little less than $200 billion combined. And the trade surplus that India has enjoyed with the US is pretty small. It has varied from 20 billion to about $40 billion. It is nowhere near the region of the hundreds of billions of dollars in trade deficit that the US has with its key trading partners. So logically speaking, India should not be a prime target for trade action. And if you actually see the tariffs that we have on the 30 topmost products that the US exports to India, they are in the range of 10 to 13%. Those are not high tariffs. Yes, in certain areas we have high tariffs where we want to protect domestic industry, just as the US has very high tariffs in certain areas where they seek to protect domestic industry. So I think that this is something where the Indian government will probably have a pragmatic attitude, being firm in the areas where we think it will impact our national interest.
But Meera, I'm really sorry. I would like to come in here. I'd like to understand one thing before I bring in Amy and Andrew on this. There was a very strategic announcement by the White House right ahead of Prime Minister Modi's visit to the US, to Washington, D.C. And in as many words, it was mentioned that Trump is going to make several announcements on reciprocal tariffs right before that meeting with Prime Minister Modi. So why, in so many words, has that announcement really come just, or probably announced for that matter, just before Prime Minister Modi's meeting with Donald Trump, if India should not have to worry so much on the tariff part?
I think that is also part of his arsenal that he wants to use on tariffs. He sees tariffs not only as, a trade issue, but also as a means of raising revenue for his budget and as a negotiating leverage vis-a-vis other countries. So this is par for the kind of tactics that Trump has adopted in 2.0. For instance, he announced 25% tariffs on Canada and Mexico, then withheld them for a month, and talks will begin. So we have to wait and see. what is the kind of notification which will be issued? Will it be an enabling one? An enabling one means that then there has to be a secondary step of actually imposing reciprocal tariffs country by country, because not all countries have the same tariffs. Is it a negotiating ploy to give the US more leverage? I think we have to wait and see.
Okay.
We shouldn't jump the gun on it.
All right, Amy, let me come to you on this one. I'd like to understand from you that there was a very important meeting that Prime Minister Narendra Modi was a part of right before he is about to meet with US President Donald Trump, and that was with Tulsi Gabbard. And Tulsi has been very, very vocal in her admiration for Prime Minister Modi. In fact, very, very famously, she had gifted her the Bhagavad Gita on which she had sworn on while she was appointed, to the House of Representatives. So that is the kind of admiration that we are looking at over here. Now that she is the intelligence czar when it is about United States of America, how strategic was this particular meeting of Prime Minister Modi's with her, do you think? Amy, I believe you're on mute. Yeah, please go ahead. Sorry, Amy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I think it was extremely smart and strategic. Tulsi Gabbard is somebody who many Republicans are very happy to have as our national intelligence director. And so I think that sent a really good, healthy message to President Trump that he too favors the choice that President Trump made for that position. And not only did he meet with DNI Director Gabbard, but he's also supposed to meet with Elon Musk, who we know is spearheading what's called DOGE, the Director of Government Efficiency. And he has been spearheaded to go through and see where cuts can be made on government waste. And I know that Elon also has personal interest in India, dealing with Starlink and Tesla. So I think that the Prime Minister is making some very, very smart strategic moves by meeting with these individuals. And one thing also, too, that's been lost in the conversation is our new Secretary of State, Marco Rubio.
Yeah.
On day one of him taking that position, he met with the Quad because he understands how important it is. And so I think that right there just kick-started off the entire situation, showing the importance of the ties with India.
Right. And Professor Andrew, when it is about visas, that's one key point and something that Prime Minister Modi will have to touch upon because it concerns more than 3.5, in fact, 350,000 Indians who are part of the tech world there in the United States of America. After those key announcements by US President Trump, where do you think that conversation will head?
Well, first of all, it has to be noted that the Indian diaspora in the U.S. is the wealthiest diaspora. It's wealthier than the people who came over on the Mayflower. And it is increasingly influential politically, and both parties are vying for the support from this incredibly and increasingly influential diasporic community. And so there's an inbuilt, on the one hand, there's an inbuilt impulse on the part of the MAGA movement, the current administration, to ease the H-1B visa requirements, to accelerate the application process. They're looking for the best and the brightest in the high-tech world, and many of those come from India. There's no disputing that. But there's another constituency which makes up part of the MAGA coalition, which is nativist, and which has no time for H-1B visas. They think that privileges foreigners over native-born Americans. And they're really disinclined to think positively about any diaspora, but especially in this context, the Indian diaspora. So the MAGA movement is deeply conflicted around this. We see Elon Musk pulling one thing, but we see a lot of grassroots Republicans pushing for something very different. So the visa issue is going to remain fraught and vexing for this administration. If I were a betting man, and I'm not, I'm betting that Elon Musk and the boys will carry the day, and various visas, including the H-1Bs, that expedite and facilitate the movement of the best and the brightest from India. I think they're going to win that particular battle.
Okay, because there was a meeting of Elon Musk with Prime Minister Modi in France. What do you think transpired there?
Well, we don't know for sure because it was behind closed doors. But and this has been noted by you and by the other guests. The United States has some geopolitical and strategic interests in not alienating India, right?
Yes.
In the Indo-Pacific, the Quad, etc. Also, it has to be noted that Trump and Modi are to some extent cut from the same cloth. Conservative or right-wing populists, larger than life in all sorts of ways. And they seem to get along quite well together. So I imagine that Elon Musk, in that closed-door conversation, was not threatening India, but looking to build a stronger relationship. And also, just parenthetically, it needs to be said that the trade surplus that India enjoys with the U.S. is about the same as the trade surplus that Canada enjoys with the U.S. And yet Canada is in the crosshairs and India isn't. Now, the reciprocal tariff issue is important. So most of the things that India imports from the United States are subject only to 5% tariffs, which is nothing. But the across-the-board average is 14%, and if it depends on which number Trump focuses on. If he focuses on the 14%, then
Right.
that's going to generate some turbulence.
Right. Meena ji, I'd like to understand from you, because if we are talking about this meeting of Elon Musk with Prime Minister Modi in France, and there was a proposition that was in fact given to Musk. Of course, eventually he did not make it to India. He was about to come, and last minute that trip was cancelled for unknown reasons. But do you think preemptive those punitive trade decisions from the US, Prime Minister Modi and in turn India might just be cutting out certain tariffs already, and that is to do with the auto sector for that matter, and that's why that meeting with Elon Musk becomes very important for Modi?
I think the Indian government has reduced tariffs in certain areas, including on motorcycles and
The Harleys, yeah.
the Harleys. And it has signaled its willingness to look pragmatically at areas where the US may be interested, to see what can be done by way of give and take. We are not taking a position of, take it or leave it, this is it. We are willing to talk, and we are trying to find pragmatic solutions so that these issues which arise from Trump's overwhelming domestic agenda don't, in a sense, swamp the relationship. I think that's important, given the congruence that we have in the Indo-Pacific, on a number of global issues. And looking
But ma'am,
ahead,
particularly talking about the overarching domestic agenda that Trump has, one such thing is immigration. He has been going on talking about it. Do you think Prime Minister Modi is expected to just about convey that outrage that Indians felt in that inhuman deportation of the 104 illegal immigrants? Do you think that will be put on the table?
I think we would certainly convey our preference for a more dignified way of deportation. Because the first deportation which has taken place was a piece of political theater designed to dramatize. And so it was in a military aircraft, and the individuals were handcuffed and shackled at the legs. And it caused a political outroar in India. So the fact is that India has said we are willing to take back those of our nationals who are there illegally, because our interest is in the legal movement of experts or people, and not in supporting illegal movement. But if the deportation is done in such a fashion that it leads to political outrage in India, it makes it more difficult for the two countries to navigate this issue together. So it should be in the interest of the US also to do it in a more discreet way. Yes,
Okay.
I think President Trump wants political theater around it to demonstrate. But I think having done that, let's see whether we can do it in a more rational, more dignified fashion,
Right.
because it's also cheaper for the US. Military
Absolutely.
flights are about $4,000 an individual, if not more,
Absolutely.
to deport people.
Absolutely.
Back.
Fair point. Thank you so much, Meeraji. Thank you, Amy and Mr. Andrew, for joining us. That'll be all on this debate number 1, which concerns Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit to United States of America. Of course, all eyes are now in just a few hours as that big bilateral between Prime Minister Modi and US President Trump happens. We go into a very short break. With that, on the other side, we have the Waqf JPC report that has triggered the centre and opposition showdown in the parliament as opposition alleges dissent note deletion. We discuss all that after this very short break.
बात जब अपने फैमिली
Prime Minister Modi has landed in Washington in chilling winter and into the front line of what is emerging as a potential trade war with the US.
We'll be signing reciprocal tariffs. The world has taken advantage of the United States for many years. They've charged us massive tariffs and we haven't charged them.
President Trump announced on Wednesday that he was preparing to introduce reciprocal tariffs on Wednesday night itself or by Thursday morning. In either case, that would, if this were to proceed as announced, come before the meeting between the Prime Minister and Trump, and that meeting is expected at 4 p.m. local time here in Washington on Thursday. Reciprocal tariffs, under which the US would impose tariffs just as high as the other country imposes on US goods, are not of course aimed only at India, but they could be aimed at India the most, for the reason that of all US trade partners, Indian tariffs are the highest by far, on average 6 to 7 times as high as those levied by the US, in some cases 100% or so. Trump has spoken of India as the tariff king, and he has called India a very big abuser of trade relationships. Trump has also taken aim at the trade imbalance with India, currently $30 to $40 billion estimated in India's advantage. The declared timing of this announcement on reciprocal tariffs is awkward for India, to say the least. There could be a case for talking with the Prime Minister first. The Prime Minister, of course, is right next door to the White House now, to see first what India has to say, what India can offer. The declared timing alone ought to set aside those notions, if anyone still holds on to those, that some personal rapport or friendship between the two leaders will override other considerations and deliver something wonderful for India. As External Affairs Minister Jaishankar said only the other day, the US has its interests, India has its own interests, and the idea would be to see where common ground could be sought. The Trump announcement that is expected and announced is not quite in that spirit. In anticipation, India has already announced reduced tariffs on motorcycles, on satellites, on a number of goods, and offered to buy more of US goods, agricultural goods, fuel, security goods. And these are goods really that Trump would want sold to India, not made in India. The Indian government has said it will wait for Trump to make his move before responding further. It may not have to wait long now. Prime Minister Modi has landed in Washington in chilling winter and into the front line of what is emerging as a potential trade war with the US.
We'll be signing reciprocal tariffs. The world has taken advantage of the United States for many years. They've charged us massive tariffs and we haven't charged them.
President Trump announced on Wednesday that he was preparing to introduce reciprocal tariffs on Wednesday night itself or by Thursday morning. In either case, that would, if this were to proceed as announced, come before the meeting between the Prime Minister and Trump, and that meeting is expected at 4 p.m. local time here in Washington on Thursday. Reciprocal tariffs, under which the US would impose tariffs just as high as the other country imposes on US goods, are not of course aimed only at India, but they could be aimed at India the most, for the reason that of all US trade partners, Indian tariffs are the highest by far, on average 6 to 7 times as high as those levied by the US, in some cases 100% or so. Trump has spoken of India as the tariff king, and he has called India a very big abuser of trade relationships. Trump has also taken aim at the trade imbalance with India, currently $30 to $40 billion estimated in India's advantage. The declared timing of this announcement on reciprocal tariffs is awkward for India, to say the least. There could be a case for talking with the Prime Minister first. The Prime Minister, of course, is right next door to the White House now, to see first what India has to say, what India can offer. The declared timing alone ought to set aside those notions, if anyone still holds on to those, that some personal rapport or friendship between the two leaders will override other considerations and deliver something wonderful for India. As External Affairs Minister Jaishankar said only the other day, the US has its interests, India has its own interests, and the idea would be to see where common ground could be sought. The Trump announcement that is expected and announced is not quite in that spirit. In anticipation, India has already announced reduced tariffs on motorcycles, on satellites, on a number of goods, and offered to buy more of US goods, agricultural goods, fuel, security goods. And these are goods really that Trump would want sold to India, not made in India. The Indian government has
Welcome back. You're watching Plain Speak with me, Griha. Now, the table of the Waqf Amendment Bill 2024 report in the Parliament triggered a political storm with heated clashes between the government and the opposition. Now, amid the uproar, the Rajya Sabha accepted the Joint Parliamentary Committee report, but the controversy still rages on. Congress chief and leader of opposition in the Rajya Sabha, Mallikarjun Kharge, slammed the report as fake, demanding it be sent back unless the opposition MP's dissent notes were included in it. Now, countering this attack, Union Parliamentary Affairs Minister Kiran Rijiju rejected the allegations, calling them misleading and insisting that all dissent notes had in fact been attached to the JPC report. In fact, Home Minister Amit Shah also weighed in, backing Rijiju and clarifying that the government had no objection to the inclusion of the dissent notes. Now, with tempers flaring and no sign of a compromise, the battle over the Waqf JPC report is far from over. So as this showdown over the JPC report on the Waqf Amendment Bill rages on, here's looking at the allegations and the counter allegations. So here's what the opposition is alleging firstly. They are saying that they won't be accepting a fake JPC report on Waqf. To that, the centre is responding that there has been no deletion in the JPC report. Now, another charge by the opposition is that there is a deliberate deletion of dissent notes, to which the centre counters by saying that all the dissent notes are very much attached to the report. Another allegation by the opposition is that the Waqf bill is unconstitutional. The amendments are unconstitutional. That's what the opposition says. To that, the centre is countering and claiming that the opposition is trying to mislead the parliament. Another allegation by the opposition is that they are saying that all the voices of the opposition are being muzzled by the centre, to which the centre has responded that these allegations are absolutely baseless. So we are asking on Plain Speak this evening, amid this Waqf showdown in Sansad, have the dissent really been deleted, or what the opposition really is claiming is a mere hogwash?
ऐसे फर्जी रिपोर्ट को हम कभी नहीं मानेंगे।
हमारे जो डिसेंट नोट में कई पेजेस और पैराग्राफ्स को रिडैक्ट कर दिया गया है।
मैं मेरी पार्टी की ओर से आपको विनती करना चाहता हूं कि विपक्ष के जो डिस्प्यूट्स हैं, एक सिर कर आप संसदीय कार्यप्रणालिका के उपयुक्त रूप में जो जोड़ना है वो जोड़े। इसमें मेरी पार्टी को कोई आपत्ति नहीं।
Every view, whether those who are considered by majority or those who are rejected by the majority, all reports are included.
Joining me on the broadcast this evening, Pradeep Bhandari, national spokesperson of the Bharatiya Janata Party, is with us right here in the CNN News 18 studio. Also joining us is Mahima Singh, who's the spokesperson of the Congress. And last but not the least, Rashid Kidwai, who's a senior journalist, also joins us. Pradeep, I'll begin with you. Dissenting over dissent notes. What's the truth as per the BJP?
Well, the truth, as per the JPC chairman who gave an interview to CNN News 18, and I quote the JPC chairman's interview on CNN News 18, 281-page dissent note is attached. This is the longest dissent note attached in any JPC report till date, point number one. Point number two, the JPC has taken 1.5 crore responses, 92.5 lakh applications, 38 meetings, 250 plus organizational meetings. Even after this, if the opposition, in particular the Congress party, which wants to appease its vote bank by these theatrics, still wants to add further in the dissent note, as the Honorable Home Minister clarified it on the floor of the House, we are open to it. The issue here is that the Congress party is going against the Constitution of India, which was implemented by Baba Sahib Bhimrao Ambedkar ji, by these theatrics. It is not about Hindu-Muslim, it is about justice. Even Muslims today want Waqf Amendment Act because they are right now the victims. For instance, in Maharashtra, Pune, 135 Muslim families land has been taken by the Waqf land mafia. And if you do not believe us, please believe the Sachar committee report, which was at the Sachar committee, which was formed by the UPA, and I quote the Sachar committee, which said that there is a need for better utilization of Waqf properties. So if the Congress party opposes it, it is opposing the Constitution of India and its letter and spirit.
Pradeep, you have preempted already the kind of negations that might be coming in on your views. But Mahima, let me bring you in here. Appeasement and unconstitutional politics that is at play here. That is the charge by the Bharatiya Janata Party. How do you respond?
Jai Hind, the Bharatiya Janata Party is interestingly talking of transparency. The very intent for bringing this bill as per the Bharatiya Janata Party is that they want to bring about transparency. Whereas all you see in their mode of acting towards these fundamental rights of various minorities in this country is opacity and obscurity, Griha. So, you see, that is where the question arises. Today, our Honorable President of the Congress Party, Mr. Mallikarjun Kharge, has raised very significant points on the floor of the Parliament. He has raised questions about those dissenting notes that have been deleted. Now, the BJP spokesperson can present all talks on your show, but what has been spoken on the floor of the Parliament, there's some very critical matrix to it. Also, you see, there's a 15-11 majority in the JPC report. The dissent has totally been overlooked by the Bharatiya Janata Party. The members of that joint parliamentary committee had been requesting for some very critical documents to analyze before they can arrive at some conclusions. Those were not provided to those members of that JPC. Constitutional rights are being directly attacked as a matter of fact through this kind of amendment that is being brought about. The Waqf Bill Act has been amended in the past, but only for good. Now, for example, Griha, what is the point of bringing non-Muslims on these boards when we are not treating other religious bodies in a similar manner?
My point is, was this not discussed in the JPC? JPC had stakeholders from all the political parties. Was this not discussed before this report was really collated?
That's exactly what I'm saying, that there are matters that have been discussed in the JPC that have not been brought on record. There are dissent notes that have completely been ignored, rather deleted, as Mr. Kharge. And I think the BJP spokesperson must speak very responsibly when he comments upon these dissent notes, because Mr. Kharge is amongst one of the senior most members of the House, one of the most elected, for the most.
He's calling it fake. He's calling the report that's been tabled fake.
With utmost responsibility, Griha, and I think we must heed that. When leader of opposition in Rajya Sabha speaks, we must listen. We must not we must not ignore it just because it doesn't suit our own narrative. Okay. I think as responsible citizens of the country, it is a matter of fact and we must heed it. Let the ruling party come clean on that.
All right. I'll let Pradeep quickly respond before I go to Mr.
Well, the
Rashid.
leader of opposition does not have the veto on the proceedings of the House, and the leader of the opposition, if it walks away from his constitutional duty, we have the constitutional right to question the leader of opposition. Point number one, why are non-Muslims on the board? I believe that, Mahima, you should give a call to Mr. Kharge, who comes from Karnataka, and in Karnataka, in Vijaypura district, more than 1,000 farmers' land has been taken by the Waqf. And please go and read the constitution and principles of natural justice, where the accused does the logic of the constitution is that if you grab my land, you have to prove it. You have to prove it. In the Waqf, it's the other way round. So you are going against the principle of natural justice. And read the section 85 of the Waqf Act, which bars civil court jurisdiction. In order to appease your Muslim vote bank, you are trying to oppose the Waqf Amendment Act, Mahima. And I'll tell you why we are getting non-Muslims, because in Kerala, from where your parliamentarians come from, 600 families, majority of them are from the Christian community, are still going from one pillar to the other because the Waqf has grabbed their land. You know why we are getting non-Muslims also, Mahima? Because Waqf has claimed on Mahakumbh, Waqf has claimed on Parliament of India. So please remove your black goggles and look at reality.
That's a major claim that you're making,
Yeah,
Pradeep.
yeah,
Waqf claiming on Parliament and also the Mahakumbh. Yes, okay, Mahima, quick response because Mr. Kidwai is waiting.
Yeah, you see, this government approaches the fundamental rights of this country's citizens very, very casually. And that is why
You
they
had
end up doing
taken the fundamental rights during the time of emergency, Mahima.
Let her respond now. Yes,
You see,
Mahima.
this is the problem. This is the problem. The Bharatiya Janata Party and its representatives do not believe in consensus, do not believe in taking under view all the viewpoints. That's what we are seeing on your debate on your channel here also right now.
Mahima, he's
Griha.
categorically
What
talking
we are-
about
points we are
the
making-
land grab in Karnataka. He's spoken about Kerala, and these are the two examples of non-BJP ruled states. Karnataka, particularly a Congress ruled state. How do you counter it? Because you just mentioned about the inclusion of non-Muslim members onto the board of the Waqf and how the opposition is not one with that idea. And this is what has come in as a counter by the Bharatiya Janata Party. I wonder why and how Pradeep does that answer that question, but I'd let Mahima, in fact, respond.
Yeah. Griha, you see, Shri K.C. Venugopal, one of our very senior members of parliament, has in fact said today, and I will quote it here, that by removing the Waqf by use clause through this amendment, there will be dispute of each and every mosque which has no land deal record, and so on and so forth. There are so many points to ponder over, but the point is this party, this ruling regime doesn't want to record the voices of dissent, rather they want to trample them. That is what we have seen while they are approaching this very critical issue. I think amendments have, whenever these amendments have been done in the past, they have been done to empower the Waqf Council.
Wow.
They have been done to change the composition of Waqf boards.
Can I answer
They have been
this?
done to survey and document the Waqf properties.
lying
They have been
blatantly
done to
on your
restrict
show.
transaction of
There has been serious aspersions that have, Pradeep, I'll come to you. There have been serious aspersions that's been cast as far as the Waqf and the rulings of the Waqf, especially in the state of Karnataka, and you know that too, Mahima. And the Siddaramaiah administration has a lot of answering to do when it comes to that. But before we go further into that, let me bring in Mr. Kidwai because he's been very, very patiently waiting. Mr. Rashid Kidwai, I'd like to understand from you. First, there is an accusation that's coming in from the opposition that all the dissent notes do not find a mention in this report, and hence the tabling is null and void. It's a fake report that's being submitted. Now, there is a opposition, there's a counter that's coming in from the center where they are saying that dissent notes are pretty much there, and if at all you want to point out on what is missing, go ahead and point it out. Then where do you think has been the problem? Why this opposition walkout?
So, Grant, it's a problem as with both procedural as well as political. The concept of JPC is that when you have a joint parliamentary committee, you have members cutting across party lines, giving their inputs. Now, the issue is not about dissent. Thing is, if your views are not included, if there is just as a part of annexure, it will not make any qualitative difference on the law that is being enacted. So that is a thing that there is a procedural aspect that you can say that, okay, all dissent notes have been compiled or used as annexure, but if they don't find place in the actual piece of legislation, it would not mean anything. Now comes to the Waqf Act per se. There is
No,
lot
but
of
before you go to
misgiving
that,
and your
Mr.
rumors
Kidwai,
would
before
not-
you go to that, I'd like to first understand, can the JPC chairperson, Mr. Jagdambika Pal, unilaterally take this decision that certain dissent notes had unparliamentary language and that's why they are being done away with? They would not find a mention. Is that the normal parlance, normal precedence? Is this how things work here?
There is no normalcy. That is the problem. There is no normalcy because the concept of this committee system is that it's a process of give and take. Like you say something, I say something, and we agree to disagree. We agree to agree on some point. And so that process is not there because there is a fortress approach on the part of opposition as well as on the part of ruling dispensation, and that is where the laws are being brought on a political spectrum, where there is a sort of a very false and a very harmful narrative sought to be projected. For instance, the very fact that the Waqf land, as you understand, belongs to government. It doesn't belong to community. If there has been a mismanagement of Waqf property in any part of the country, it is a failure of that particular state apparatus, the bureaucracy, and the people who are doing it. So, but our impression is sought to be given that here is a sort of, Muslim or minorities who are sitting over this 9 lakh acres of land and all. This is a very harmful, and I said it's an absolute false narrative. Just one small point I want to make, because, a lot of it is being said about that the split of it, there should be inclusion of women and non-Muslims, all point taken. See, in Shahbano judgment when it came, when Rajiv Gandhi government enacted, Muslim Women Protection Act, to allow the divorced Muslim women to get some kind of support, maintenance from the Waqf board. So it was given that 500 rupees can be given by the Waqf board. You will be surprised, you may not even have born then. Till now, successive, so many governments have come, including 11 years of Narendra Modi government. There is not a single instance where, a divorced Muslim woman has got any funding from the Waqf. Now, whose fault is it? Is it a community's fault or the government's fault? Successive governments. The Congress was in Uttar Pradesh, last time it was in governance was in 89. Since 89, Congress has been out of power. So how can, everything be put on Congress doorsteps?
Okay. Pradeep, would you like to answer that? One particular thing that Mr. Kidwai mentions is the fortress approach that the centre and the opposition are working with when it comes to these committees. He says there is no precedence whatsoever. Sab apni marzi ke kar rahe hain.
When Mr. Kidwai forgot to also tell that it was Mr. Rajiv Gandhi who, under the pressure of the radical Maulanas, had to overturn and pass from the parliament on what happened in the Shahbano case. We all remember that. Please, Mr. Kidwai, speak the reality on Shahbano. Mr. Rajiv Gandhi was responsible for denying the Muslim women their rights. That is the only truth of Shahbano case. You also know it, I also know it, and the people of India also know it. I want to go to the principle of it. The principle of it is here that what was the first transfer of the Waqf land? The first transfer of the Waqf land happened in 1185 when Muhammad Ghori transferred 2 villages to Jama Masjid
Multan. You're still not answering my question. I am asking you about precedence. I asked you about JPC chairperson who's taken a decision.
It is all passed by majority. That is the law. It is not.
Then why the walkout, Pradeep?
Because he is passing away from the constitutional responsibility. Please tell me any time in the past in the parliament the opposition has walked out after their demand has been agreed by the speaker. I challenge this to Mahima if she can reiterate one instance in the history of Indian Parliament. The opposition asked for a further dissent note.
Your response, I'll close this.
And agreed by. Please tell us.
You see, the BJP spokesperson, of course, will, design a conundrum after conundrum because they don't want to get to the straight point that why are they not recording dissent notes? Why are they not
lying on your show? I beg to differ. No, you are lying, Mahima. You are lying.
Let her get it. All right, Mahima, quickly, 10 seconds.
She has to answer.
Pradeep, let her respond. I have to close this. Mahima, 10 seconds, please respond.
You see, this is what. I will not play on the pitch set by the BJP spokesperson. What I am questioning is why is this government and the Congress party, our senior most leader has questioned today, why is this government acting with opacity and in unconstitutional manner?
It's going about in circles. I'd like to thank all my guests for joining us on the broadcast. I'm really sorry, Pradeep, we are out of time because this is where it is, gone down to dissenting over dissent notes. What really is the truth? No one knows. There's a walkout that's been staged by the opposition over the matter. Thank you so much for watching.
MDH का किचन किंग
Prime Minister Modi has landed in Washington in chilling winter and into the front line of what is emerging as a potential trade war with the US.
We'll be signing reciprocal tariffs. The world has taken advantage of the United States for many years. They've charged us massive tariffs that we haven't charged them.
President Trump announced on Wednesday that he was preparing to introduce reciprocal tariffs on Wednesday night itself or by Thursday morning. In either case, that would, if this were to proceed as announced, come before the meeting between the Prime Minister and Trump, and that meeting is expected at 4 p.m. local time here in Washington on Thursday. Reciprocal tariffs, under which the US would impose tariffs just as high as the other country imposes on US goods, are not of course aimed only at India, but they could be aimed at India the most, for the reason that of all US trade partners, Indian tariffs are the highest by far, on average 6 to 7 times as high as those levied by the US, in some cases 100% or so. Trump has spoken of India as the tariff king, and he has called India a very big abuser of trade relationships. Trump has also taken aim at the trade imbalance with India, currently $30 to $40 billion estimated in India's advantage. The declared timing of this announcement on reciprocal tariffs is awkward for India, to say the least. There could be a case for talking with the Prime Minister first. The Prime Minister, of course, is right next door to the White House now, to see first what India has to say, what India can offer. The declared timing alone ought to set aside those notions, if anyone still holds on to those, that some personal rapport or friendship between the two leaders will override other considerations and deliver something wonderful for India. As External Affairs Minister Jaishankar said only the other day, the US has its interests, India has its own interests, and the idea would be to see where common ground could be sought. The Trump announcement that is expected and announced is not quite in that spirit. In anticipation, India has already announced reduced tariffs on motorcycles, on satellites, on a number of goods, and offered to buy more of US goods, agricultural goods, fuel, security goods. And these are goods really that Trump would want sold to India, not made in India. The Indian government has said it will wait for Trump to make his move before responding further. It may not have to wait long now. Prime Minister Modi has landed in Washington in chilling winter and into the front line of what is emerging as a potential trade war with the US.
We'll be signing reciprocal tariffs. The world has taken advantage of the United States for many years. They've charged us massive tariffs that we haven't charged them.
President Trump announced on Wednesday that he was preparing to introduce reciprocal tariffs on Wednesday night itself or by Thursday morning. In either case, that would, if this were to proceed as announced, come before the meeting between the Prime Minister and Trump, and that meeting is expected at 4 p.m. local time here in Washington on Thursday. Reciprocal tariffs, under which the US would impose tariffs just as high as the other country imposes on US goods, are not of course aimed only at India, but they could be aimed at India the most, for the reason that of all US trade partners, Indian tariffs are the highest by far, on average 6 to 7 times as high as those levied by the US, in some cases 100% or so. Trump has spoken of India as the tariff king, and he has called India a very big abuser of trade relationships. Trump has also taken aim at the trade imbalance with India, currently $30 to $40 billion estimated in India's advantage. The declared timing of this announcement on reciprocal tariffs is awkward for India, to say the least. There could be a case for talking with the Prime Minister first. The Prime Minister, of course, is right next door to the White House now, to see first what India has to say, what India can offer. The declared timing alone ought to set aside those notions, if anyone still holds on to those, that some personal rapport or friendship between the two leaders will override other considerations and deliver something wonderful for India. As External Affairs Minister Jaishankar said only the other day, The US has its interests, India has its own interests, and the idea would be to see where common ground could be sought. The Trump announcement that is expected and announced is not quite in that spirit. In anticipation, India has already announced reduced tariffs on motorcycles, on satellites, on a number of goods, and offered to buy more of US goods, agricultural goods, fuel, security goods. And these are goods really that Trump would want sold to India, not made in India. The Indian government has said it will wait for Trump to make his move before responding further. It may not have to wait long now. Prime Minister Modi has landed in Washington in chilling winter and into the front line of what is emerging as a potential trade war with the US.
We'll be signing reciprocal tariffs. The world has taken advantage of the United States for many years. They've charged us massive tariffs and we haven't charged them.
President Trump announced on Wednesday that he was preparing to introduce reciprocal tariffs on Wednesday night itself or by Thursday morning. In either case, that would, if this
Namaste, Jai Hind and welcome to this edition of The Right Stand. I am Anand Narsimhan and we begin with big news coming through from Assam. Assam Chief Minister Himanta Biswa Sarma has raised questions about a meeting between Congress MP Gaurav Gogoi, which he held 10 years ago with the then Pakistan High Commissioner to Bharat, and linked it to his wife Elizabeth Gogoi. In a post on platform X, Himanta Biswa Sarma has said that in 2015, the Pakistan High Commissioner to India at that time, Mr. Abdul Basit, invited a first-time member of Parliament and his startup policy for youth to discuss India-Pakistan relations. So on after his startup published an article in The Hindu criticizing the border security forces' handling of illegal Bangladeshi immigrants. A closer examination of his parliamentary questions revealed a growing focus on sensitive defence matters. Interestingly, these developments occurred immediately after his marriage to a British citizen with a professional background that raises further questions. Continuing to target Gaurav Gogoi's wife, Himanta Biswa Sarma has said that she had in the past spent time in Pakistan employed by an organisation widely believed to be a front for the Inter-Services Intelligence or the ISI. Himanta Biswa Sarma and other BJP leaders have recently launched an offensive against the Congress MP Gaurav Gogoi, raising his several questions. Why, even after 12 years of marriage, his wife Elizabeth Gogoi has refused to accept citizenship of Bharat? Has Elizabeth Gogoi engaged with officials of the government of Pakistan? If so, please make these engagements public. In her capacity as an aide to the US Senator Tom Udall, did Elizabeth Gogoi play any role in convincing Tom Udall to adopt a pro-Pakistan policy? Has Elizabeth Gogoi met or come to know of entities or individuals linked to George Soros? And has she had any engagement with such entities or individuals? These are questions that the Assam Chief Minister and many BJP leaders have thereafter asked. Further on, will Gaurav Gogoi make these engagements public, they ask. During Elizabeth Gogoi's stay in Pakistan, did she know or meet entities or individuals who are actively working against Bharat? Is another question. Did Gaurav Gogoi's NGO, Farm to Food, receive any funds from institutions linked to either George Soros or entities who are closer or friendlier to the ISI and Pakistan? The Congress MP has hit back at the Assam Chief Minister's allegations. Listen in to what Gaurav Gogoi had to say.
असम के मुख्यमंत्री श्री हिमंत बिस्वा शर्मा जी पिछले 3-4 महीने से थोड़े बेचैन हैं। भ्रष्टाचार के एक के बाद एक आरोप उनके पीडब्ल्यूडी विभाग पर आ रहे हैं, जिसकी चर्चा आज हर अखबार में हो रही है। हम जनप्रतिनिधि हैं, हम जनता की आवाज उठाएंगे। 1 साल बाद असम में विधानसभा चुनाव होंगे और जनता तय करेगी कि उनका आशीर्वाद किसके साथ रहेगा।
Moving on here on The Right Stand, Prime Minister Narendra Modi is in Washington on a crucial 2-day visit to the United States. He was welcomed by the Indian community at the Blair House. This marks his first visit with President Donald Trump coming back into power at the White House, and ever since the latter has returned to the White House this January, is the first big visit, and it's upon the invitation of Donald Trump himself. A power-packed schedule awaits the Prime Minister. PM Modi will be meeting the US President at around 2:35 a.m. later tonight. So Thursday night, Friday early morning Indian Standard Time, 2:35 a.m., followed by a press briefing at around 3:40 a.m. And at 4:10 a.m., Donald Trump will be hosting a dinner for Prime Minister Narendra Modi. So there will be a continuous rolling coverage overnight here on CNN News 18. At 9 p.m. India time, Prime Minister is expected to meet the NSA, Michael Waltz. And at 10 p.m. Indian Standard Time, Prime Minister Narendra Modi is expected to meet Elon Musk, and at 10:45 p.m. IST, the Prime Minister is expected to meet Vivek Ramaswamy. So all these meetings and engagements before Prime Minister Narendra Modi meets President Donald Trump. Now, US President Donald Trump wrote on a social media platform, Truth Social, 3 great weeks, perhaps the best ever, but today is the big one. Reciprocal tariffs make America great again. The post comes ahead of his meeting with Prime Minister Modi, who is in the US for a 2-day visit. Now, Make in India and Atmanirbhar Bharat, these will be the big agenda in the Bharat-US talks. That's what sources close to government are telling CNN News 18. Our national security, they are also given to understand that at the NSA level talks in Washington, D.C., the focus will be on defense ties between the two nations, while giving Bharat's interest topmost priority. This time around, NSA Ajit Doval is actually travelling. So ever since there was the court litigation that opened up proceedings on the Pannu matter, and they wanted to question Ajit Doval, that was during the Biden administration, now Ajit Doval is actually travelling to the US. So clearly there is a shift in the entire equation and the posturing. But will that yield results? That's the big question. What's on the agenda? Our Security Affairs Editor Manoj Kumar Gupta getting us more details. The idea is actually to strengthen Make in India with new technologies. Government sources have further said that the Indian side is very keen to buy technology which can serve Make in India. Major deals are expected during this, which will be beneficial for Bharat in the long run and satisfy the joint manufacturing push that's being made by Donald Trump. So beyond just the trade and the tariff aspect of it, will there be other aspects, the security aspect, the defense aspect? Professor Salvatore Babones, American sociologist with us, Dr. Anand Ranganathan, author, political commentator and scientist with us, and Sushant Sareen, senior fellow ORF with us. My namaste to everybody. Thank you very, very much. Professor Babones, my first question to you. Two leaders who are interested in making their nation great. So there is MAGA and Make in India, two objectives. Are they able to work together? Will they be able to come together to find common ground? They're great friends, but is it possible for these nations to work together, or will there be a clash of intent, aspirations?
It seems to be relatively easy for nationalists to work together because they understand each other. And now by that I don't just mean Narendra Modi and Donald Trump, but really strong nationalists of all stripes seem to be able to come to a mutual understanding that each one realizes that the other one's looking out for his or her own country, and they're comfortable with that. They're okay with that. So if you saw, even when Donald Trump in his first administration was dealing with someone as difficult as Kim Jong-un, they could understand each other even if they disagreed. Now, Narendra Modi is going to be much easier to get along with than Kim Jong-un, and we saw that during Trump's first administration. There just isn't that much of a problem because both of them expect the other to want to preference their own side. Both of them expect the other to be tough negotiators who want what's best for their own country, and this is crucially important,
right,
both of them want to get along.
So two leaders who want to get along, so they're going to come across onto the table. Sushant Sareen, there are two objectives, both of them wanting to further their nation's interests. They have great equations. So let's take this conversation forward. What is it that Bharat can offer as a bargaining chip, the upper hand? Can we push on the defense deals? Can we also look at somewhere certain connections on security improving? Because America needs Bharat here in this region if we need to counter China.
Anand, I think both America needs India and India needs America. I don't think we should get into this zero sum kind of an approach. I think both sides need each other, and I think there is a understanding on both sides that there are a lot of